favorite part of the show, our favorite part of the broadcast here. Okay. This is so exciting. I just want to welcome and everybody wherever you are listening to your podcast in your car. You might be mopping with some Mr. Clean or Misto Lean or Fabuloso, whatever it is that you use. But please put your hands together for the editorial director of the Today Show and the author of What Would Frida Do, Arianna Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wepa, wepa, wepa. Okay, we are going to get to an interview, but first we've got to have some fun.
Yeah,
okay?
There's a 5-minute musical intro, and once that's done, then we can start.
Honestly, like, I just want to make that my alarm clock every morning. Like that could just wake me up in the morning. That would be amazing.
Sound the accordions, please. Give it a minute.
Speaking of morning, like you work for the Today Show, like, are you gonna go to sleep right after this interview?
What word?
Yeah. I am on grandma hours. Like I am not a morning person at all. So in order for me to wake up for my new hours, I literally have to be in bed by like absolute latest is like 10 p.m. and that's pushing it. Like it's yeah. I know.
10 p.m. Do you know where Arianna's sleeping at now?
Getting
I know. It's senior citizen hours, but you know, it's all worth it. But it was the one thing I think when I took this new job where I was like, am I going to be able to do like the morning thing? But you get used to it. It's just like going to bed earlier, and like now suddenly I'm like, ooh, like okay, it's 6. Let's do this.
But my question was, what's your arrival time? And I gave everyone a sense of what you do, but could you give us some color to that? What is your role at the Today Show?
Yeah, so I am still working from home. So my arrival time is like 5 minutes after I open my house.
Yes.
I love that.
Right now. So I'm editorial director of all things digital for Today. So that means our website, social channels, all that good stuff. So luckily for me, for right now, we're still working from home mostly. I'm going in 1 day a week. So typical day right now is I'm usually waking up around 6 so that I can be online and like talking with my team. Everything on my team happens on Slack. So basically what I do is I'm essentially the editor-in-chief of our website. So we're publishing like most days between like 50 to 75 stories. It's really insane. It's a huge team. It's a really big site. Because in addition to kind of covering what's happening on the Today Show, we're also a news site. So we're covering like last night, Tom Brady decided actually I'm not retiring, or like, you know, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Frank, what the hell? Are you a Tom Brady fan?
Wow,
I
Frank. Well, his hat,
But like, you know, everything from like, we don't cover a lot of hard news, but like Ukraine and Russia, you know, everything that's going on there, you know, what is like our way into that. Them are covering what's happening on the show. Them are covering content like celeb, pop culture stuff. So basically as editorial director, I'm like the person who is, you know, I'm looking at our lineups every day. I'm making sure that all the stories that are being churned out are accurate and that they feel good and they feel right for the brand. You know, editors are pitching stories to me, you know, running things by me for gut checks. I started in November and I'm still pretty new, but a big part of the reason I was brought in was to help us figure out, we have a huge audience. We have over, you know, between 50 million and 60 million visitors a month, which is insane.
Wow.
And so the website is really big, and it's like, obviously we have this connection to the Today Show, which is iconic, but how do we expand our digital presence to not just be known as the Today Show's website, but like to become known as today.com. So it's a big task, but I've been here since November. And so in addition to like kind of doing the day-to-day tasks, I'm also in a lot of meetings and like doing a lot of brainstorming on my own of figuring out how to kind of make my mark on this team and on this brand and take Today to the next level digitally. Because like most things, you know, some people will never see the Today Show, but they will only ever interact with us on TikTok, or they will only ever Google a random story and end up on our website, or they will only ever see our Facebook page. So it's like taking all that into account and figuring out how to like take this brand to the next level.
Wow.
Wow, that's quite a task. And you were recently at Oprah at O Magazine. Was it a similar role or was it different for you?
Yeah, fun fact is that I started my career at Oprah as an intern back in the day. That was my second job out of college. My first job was the New York Daily News, and then I interned post grad at Oprah. And then full circle moment, like 12 years later, I returned again to launch the website for Oprah Magazine. So Oprah Mag never had its own website. Was a little late to the party digitally, and Oprah finally was like, "What's up? Like, we got to figure this out. We got to figure And so it's a joint venture with Oprah's team and Hearst magazines. And so I came back to work for Hearst again as a digital director, and basically like from scratch had to hire a team, had to figure out the vision, had to kind of find the middle ground between like what Oprah wanted and also what Hearst wanted, which is like traffic numbers. They're more the business, and then she's more of the like, but I want the super soul, like I want that part of it. So yeah, that was my job for about 3 years. That was a wild ride. I mean, starting something from scratch and doing it with the pressure of the Oprah name is not for the faint of heart, but it was amazing, and I learned so much. And I think that experience like really teed me up to now do this on this level for today.
Now, how involved is someone like, obviously the magazine has Oprah's name, but how involved is she in what content goes into the website? Is it something where it's like you occasionally hear that she has an opinion about something, or is it like she's like hands-on, or she's hands-off?
She was definitely vocal. I mean, it wasn't like every single story. It wasn't like she was in there like editing, but she was not afraid to say if she had an opinion or a thought, or to send an idea, or to ask us to do something, or she definitely was involved. And it was the same with the magazine for many years. She was, I think, more involved than most people would think. It's definitely not a situation where she's just the face. Her name is on it, and she cares about it deeply, and she really cares about the content. So yeah, there was definitely those like unexpected calls or texts or emails.
I need my favorite things in the front page. I used to love her favorite. That's how I used to get I used to get a lot of Christmas gift ideas from just looking. And now, she doesn't have the TV show, so you got to look online for the favorite things. So I'm pretty sure.
Exactly. Yep.
That's my Christmas list. I'm like, there's some things a little too expensive, but like, for the most part, I'm like, I'm gonna get my mom this soap collection that I saw on Oprah's favorite.
Yeah, go to like the lower end of the spectrum.
The lower end, the discount rack of Oprah's favorite thing. Yeah.
Something else that needs to be on your Christmas list, holiday list, birthday list is What Would Frida Do?
Ooh.
A guide to living boldly by our girl Arianna Davis, who's gonna show us a copy of the book over Zoom.
Put it on right, yeah.
Look at that beautiful cover. Look at your book.
I would hang that. I would hang that cover. That's a great looking cover.
I have it on my wall. That's
nice.
That's in my other room. But
yes.
yeah.
Dope.
Tell us all about this guide to living boldly. We love Frida. We actually just had Vicente Fusco, the associate producer from Lighthouse, who's producing the immersive Frida Kahlo exhibit, which announced a few more cities since we've interviewed him.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Is New York there, Rachel?
I believe New York is on the list, right? Did I make that up? And Toronto and San Francisco.
Nice.
So it looks like it's coming. But don't quote me officially on New York. Officially, I saw San Francisco and Toronto. Okay. So go check that out. But let's talk about this wonderful book. Arianna, tell us about your inspiration behind writing this book and what readers can take away from it.
I always say I feel like Frida found me with this book. It's the weirdest story. I was at Oprah. I had just started. I was in the phase of like, I think we were getting ready to launch the website. I was working 24/7, had like zero brain energy to do anything else. And then an agent reaches out to me who was working with Hachette Books, and said that basically, they were thinking about in this time of women's empowerment and encouraging women to live their best lives, that it would be interesting to do to write or publish a book around the life of the iconic Frida Kahlo. And they were asking around, and apparently my name came up several times as somebody who is like obsessed with Frida. So you're a real Frida fan, but like word on the street is like, this girl is like a little obsessed with her.
Yo, they talk about you, yo. That's amazing. People just bring up Frida like, Arianna, you know her problem. Yeah, it could be beneficial.
Right, exactly. So they reached out and I was like, this is an amazing opportunity, but like I couldn't think. I was like, how is it possible I could write a book and also have this day job where I'm launching this huge thing? And I really agonized over it because I wanted to do it. I've been a bookworm since I was a kid. I've always wanted to write a book. That's always been a dream of mine. And I've been obsessed with Frida for, since my obsession with her really began in high school when I watched the movie starring Salma Hayek. I knew about Frida. I had seen her art, being Latina, just knowing of her, but I didn't really know her true story and what a badass she was until that movie. And that was what for me really just sparked this like obsession where I became every Christmas my friends were getting me like the Frida t-shirts, the Frida tote bags, all that stuff.
Frida
I read all
lunchbox.
these biographies. Yes, the keychains.
You've got to show us your Frida tattoo before we finish the podcast.
No, she has a Frida tattoo. What?
I don't.
I made it up.
I thought about it. I'm not gonna lie, but I didn't. I was like, that might be going a little too far. But yeah, so and then there was this moment where I was just like really agonizing, like, do I write this book? And then I remember asking myself, like, okay, what would Frida do in this moment? And it was like, obviously, Frida is gonna be like, girl, you better write that book. So that was kind of how like the idea of calling it What Would Frida Do? And I ended up deciding that I did want to take on this project, but I was like, there's been so many biographies written about her, so many movies, so many projects. If I am going to contribute to kind of hopefully helping to tell her story to more people, I want to do it in a unique way. So eventually came up with this idea of like it being part biography, but also self-help in a way that hopefully will, I really wanted to bring her story to the younger generation, people who have only seen her quotes on Instagram or maybe have seen the Frida t-shirts, but have no idea who she is and how far ahead of her time she was. But also looking at like, as somebody who loves her, what are the lessons that we can take from her all these years later after her death? We're still seeing her murals she's all over Brooklyn. She's all over social media. Why is that? And what are the lessons we can learn from her, from how far ahead of her time she was? So yeah, that's kind of the backstory.
I love that story about the story. I really can't wait to get a copy of this myself and read it. Really proud. And how long did it take for you to write this book, if you don't mind me asking? What was your process like too?
It was a year, and that's really fast for a book. Let me tell you, because it was like, I wanted more time, but the publisher, like when they saw my initial proposal, they really loved it. And then also they were like, this is a great book for the holidays. So basically it was like a very tight deadline for it to be like done in time for us to get it out for the holidays. So basically like it was about a year from like, researching, writing. I took about, I think I had been writing and researching for like about 6 months when I feel like I hit a roadblock and I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm just writing the biography that I said that I didn't want to write. Like I'm not going down this creative route that I wanted to go. And I literally had another moment of like, what would Frida do? And I was like, I gotta go to Mexico. So I went to Mexico City.
I
took a week off. Yeah, I took a week off my day job. That was the other thing too. It was just balancing, the day job with doing this. But I took a week off so that I could just solely focus on the book. I went and I stayed in Coyoacán. I went to visit La Casa Azul. I went to the house she shared with Diego. I went to like the bookstores, and I was like, I was very artsy. I was walking through the street, just like channeling my inner Frida, like yeah, right. You can see. I was just walking through the streets, like, oh, that's probably the corner where her and Diego XYZ. And then at night, I would just write and write and write, and it was literally the best thing I could have done because I felt like I was stuck and I had to do something really drastic to really also just, to make sure I was doing her justice and making sure I was doing the research because, yes, I'm Latina, but I'm Puerto Rican, right? Frida's Mexican. And I wanted to make sure I went to Mexico. I went to Mexico City. I interviewed people. I wanted to make sure it was like as authentic to her and her culture also as possible. So that was a big moment.
So this sounded like art imitating life because the book is also called What Would Frida Do? A Guide to Living Boldly. And here you are. To get through the book, you had to live boldly. Go to Mexico. Hello. Parallel, anybody?
And it's funny, I didn't realize a lot of those parallels until like I started like later, like after the book was already out, and like people would ask me questions, and I would be like, oh, like that was kind of bold. Like the fact that I wrote this book, like it's just like it just started to hit me later, but it was like in the moment I just was like, I gotta get this done. Like how do I do this? As what is it gonna take? And I think that is a kindred spirit with Frida.
What'd you find out about Frida after going to Mexico and doing more research? What's something that you found out that you were surprised?
Ooh, I think one of my favorite stories was that when I went to the museum, so La Casa Azul, where she grew up and is now a museum dedicated to her life. There, some of the museum workers there basically talk about like how it's allegedly haunted, and people swear that at nighttime they see her clothing move.
No,
way.
Yeah, and I was like, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, like knowing all that we know about Frida. But that was one of my favorite stories where it was just very like, I was like, tell me more.
Wow, interesting.
And yeah, and I think a lot of the stories are very well known, but like one of my favorite Frida stories is she was coming off of a plane with Diego, and her husband was the most famous one. He was Diego Rivera. He was this like big international artist, and she was just his wife during the time that she was alive. She wasn't known as Frida as we know her now. And a journalist interviewed her and was like, how does it feel to be married to Diego? He's such a famous artist. And she was like, yeah, like Diego's fine for a little boy, but it is I who am the great artist. And like she was like 25, 26.
Oh.
And she wanted to be an artist, and she just said it like that, and had no, she just was always bold like that. And so that there was a newspaper article that was featured in back in like 1926 or something. And seeing that, like actually I got to see that at a library when I was in Mexico City, and seeing like the original article, that was kind of mind-blowing, being like imagining she's Mexicana, she's a woman, it's the 1920s, and she was like there in print, like, yeah, anyways, like I'm the real artist, forget my husband. Like she was just so far ahead of her time.
Wow, you almost get this glow, this like your eyes are sparkling when you speak of Frida. I just think that's intense. I think that in a good way, I think that you connected with her spirit. You went to the motherland where she is from. Oh, that's so inspirational. Okay, I want to talk more about your process, okay? Because you're a seasoned writer. A lot of writers are tuned into this show and want to learn how to better their process or finesse. I shouldn't say better, but just finesse or cultivate, evolve their process, right? What are some tips that you've learned along the way? I mean, writing a novel in a year, that sounds really hard. How do you get into that mental? I hear you. You went to Mexico, but do you open up your laptop and bang, just start? Do you have to sip coffee? Do you do yoga? Like, do you pray to the Taínos? Like, do you talk to Atabe or somebody? Or like, what do you?
Maybe, I don't know. I'm like, maybe I should start doing all those things.
Yeah.
I think honestly, this is something that keeps coming up. So I'm like, I feel like it's the same with like working out. It's like discipline, like that. Really, that's it. It's like just having a routine. It's not sexy. It's not like the most artsy sounding thing. But the thing that I really did learn, and I think obviously everyone's different, but for me, it was like I had to figure out how to do this while also having something else really big in my life, which was like a day job that I couldn't drop the ball on that. So it was really like, okay, I work from this hour to this hour, so I have to build in an hour to like come home and eat a little dinner and decompress. And then from this hour to this hour, Monday through Friday, I have to write at least this many words. And then on Saturdays, like at least for 6 months, like sorry girls, can't go to brunch. Like I have to work, I have to work on writing on the book. And it really just took a lot of scheduling and figuring out the timing of it. That was all really helpful. But I think the other thing too was like, the one thing that wasn't as disciplined was like sometimes if I just felt like I had an idea or a thought pass through my head, I would just jot it down on my notes app on my phone if I was on the go, or if I felt like a certain urge to write, I would just like try to open my laptop and just bang out what I was thinking. And then sometimes it would just evolve into like, a few more hundred or thousand words. So all that is to say, I don't know that I have like the most like, effective writing process, other than just like, you just have to sit down and force yourself sometimes. And it's not always going to be, the coolest thing. But I also think to the point about going to Mexico, my thing for writer's block is like, I do think that what's really important is just shaking your routine up. And like, sometimes it is just like change of scenery, or like, you know, doing something very unexpected. I think that's always been a good thing for me for writer's block, is that when you are so disciplined and you have to do things at a certain time in a certain way, after a while, it's like, okay, but like how am I supposed to get all this creative energy just sitting in my, you know, in my bedroom on my laptop, you know, for weeks at a time? So even if it's just go to your Starbucks, or it's like take a walk, unplug for a minute, that always really helps me too, to just like forget about it for a minute and then come back.
All right.
Really good advice.
So Arianna, in your bio, it mentions that you throughout your career you've interviewed some notable people. You know, Hillary Clinton, Mariah Carey, John Legend, Will Smith. Is there any interview that
Maluma too?
Maluma,
Yes, come on, yo.
Oprah, you mentioned Oprah. Although that probably could have been a work meeting, I don't know. But any interview that kind of stands out as memorable?
Like when I tell you, I was so nervous to interview Maluma because I was like,
I knew
it. Literally, you know, it's so weird. Like I turned into like a 14-year-old girl. I was just like, oh my God, like I'm gonna talk to Maluma. And it was over, it was on Instagram Live. And that was the other thing. It was like, it was live.
Ooh.
And he has followers. So it was like Instagram Live. And this was during peak pandemic when everyone was doing Instagram Live. So like a lot of people were tuned in, and I was sweating. Like that was just looking at, I mean, he's just a beautiful man, and just, you know, it was hard not to get distracted. But other than that, I mean, Hillary Clinton was a really big one, because this is when I was working at Refinery 29, and it was right after she released her book, What Happened, talking about what happened when she lost the election. And it was one of the first interviews that she had done, talking about what happened and how she was feeling about Trump being president. And Refinery 29 was the only digital outlet that she gave an interview to. So she did the usual NBC and CBS and everything, and we were the only digital outlet. So it was a lot of pressure. And I was like shocked that Refinery was like, we want you to do it. I was like, me? I'm not like I'm not a politics person. But what was dope about Refinery, and what really helped me there, was that they didn't want to be like every other TV outlet. They didn't want just like a typical newscaster or like broadcast journalist, you know, to be on camera. They wanted real women, people like me who, you know, look the way that I do and speak the way that I do, and aren't necessarily going to be like reporting live from, you know, XYZ. So that was really amazing. But to just kind of be thrown in, being like, all right, interviewing Hillary. I did so much research. I read the book front to cover. I took so many notes. I was really, that was probably the one interview that I was legitimately like actually really nervous about, because it was just like, you know, it was a big deal. But she was amazing. She was very lovely. She made me feel instantly comfortable. And I think I learned a lot from that experience.
Yeah, it's over. Like it would be overwhelming to be like, okay, what's gonna be my first kickoff question? You know what I mean? Like how was it being first lady? Like, was that crazy? Like, you want to really like start off strong and then just kind of like get that flow. But yeah, that would be a little scary.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
On top of everything that you do, are you currently teaching at NYU as well?
Not this semester, but in the fall I do. Yeah. So I teach writing and editing for digital for the master's program, which is another thing that they reached out, and I was like, can I really do this? And then I was like, I can't say no to it's NYU. And it's also wild too, because sometimes I'm like, first of all, I don't even have a master's. So the fact that they asked me to teach for a master's program was really an honor. And you know, they for them, it's like they need someone in this role who's going to be teaching from experience, and the experience that I have in journalism and through my career in digital. So yeah, it's been teaching is a whole other ball game, and lesson planning and all that good stuff. But I feel like I learned just as much from my students as they learned from me. So it's been great.
Are you on the works in writing another novel, Arianna?
Working on it. I'm trying. Discipline. Let me tell you, it's hard. But I have, so I want to work on fiction is my first love. So what Would Frida Do is, you know, is nonfiction. It's based on a real person, and it required a lot of research, and that kind of fell into my lap. But my dream since I was a kid is I've always wanted to write a novel, and just I have all these stories in my head that I want to get on paper. So I've been working on a little something, but to be honest with you, you know, this Today job has been my whole, like, it's taken up so much brain space in a great way. So I haven't had as much time as I would like to work on it, but I'm hoping that, like, you know, in the next couple of months I might get back into it, and hopefully you guys will see something soon.
After this interview, I know you wrote the book, What Would Frida Do? After this interview, listeners are going to be like, what would Arianna do? Right. We want to know more. So keep it coming. Keep it coming.
Yeah. I love it. I love
it. Well, I am going to ask you, I'm going to request something of you, if you don't mind, because I see you have a copy of the book near. Would you read us an excerpt from What Would Frida Do on the Latinos Out Loud podcast?
I see.
Would you do us the honor?
She's getting that glow. She getting that glow.
You guys are gassing me up. Gassing me up. I love it. I love it.
We want to hear from you. I would love to hear an excerpt, maybe one of your favorites, or maybe something you feel is apropos for the moment or for the Latinos Out Loud podcast. Whatever your heart desires. But I'm dying to hear an excerpt right now from the author herself.
Okay, well, honestly, like, one of my favorite parts is literally the first page, so that's what I'm gonna read.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so this is from the introduction. The streets of Mexico City's southern neighborhood of Coyoacán are quiet. Colorful houses with intricate iron gates dot avenues named after cities in Europe: Paris, Berlin, Madrid. Suddenly, on Calle Londres, the stillness is broken. Dozens of people are buzzing about, some standing on their toes to get a glimpse at the front of a line that wraps around the block. From 1907 through 1954, this electric blue house was home to Frida Kahlo. Since 1958, La Casa Azul has been known as the Museo Frida Kahlo, or the Frida Kahlo Museum, a donation from the artist's husband, Diego Rivera, who wanted the home he shared with his wife to become a tribute to her work. And more than 6 decades after her death, the house still feels full of life. When I first walked through the tall green entryway beneath the words Museo Frida Kahlo, I'm greeted by a large patio surrounded by walls so vibrantly blue they almost hurt the eyes. A jungle-like assortment of greenery and cacti hug the trunks of palm trees that stretch across the sky. Before heading inside, I spot a small stone bench off to the side and sit down to drink it all in. I close my eyes to focus on the sound of water sprinkling from a fountain. The autumn air is crisp and cool, and the scent of earth and moss clings to my skin. And then, as quickly as it began, my daydream is interrupted by a squeal. A tall, lanky blonde is yelling, "Excuse me," as she trips over my foot. Apparently, I'm in the way. She's been angling in the spot for a photo. After I shimmy to the side, she strikes the perfect influencer pose as her friend snaps away on her iPhone. As soon as they leave, I sigh with relief. But no sooner does she leave than a group of high school girls in matching Frida Kahlo tees arrive, chattering away in Japanese as they snap selfies. Behind them, the crowd that's being let into the museo has nearly doubled in size. A chorus of accents fills the previously peaceful space as visitors jostle one another to try to enter the home. And then we go on and on and on and on. I could keep reading, but that's the intro. I'm setting up that we're going into Frida's house and we're gonna learn how she's still.
I was already immersed.
I
was immersed in the story.
This is like,
I'm gonna be picking up this book.
Trailer on Netflix, and you're like, I need to watch the series right now. That was great. Well, I felt like I was there with you. I've never been to Casa Azul, but boy, do I want to go now. Arianna Davis, thank you so much.
Wow.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I really appreciate you guys and all the work that you're doing. I love the podcast, so it was an honor to be on.
Yes, thank you, Arianna.
Guys,
we finally did it.
One more time for author, editorial director, and just go get her, Arianna Davis.
Yeah.
Get it. Get it, girl. Get it.